Friends, some time ago, a certain postmaster in the United States came to see me. He had received a letter that was addressed simply to the good Lord. So he brought the letter to me. Oh, do not be surprised that I'm addressed that way. You'd be surprised in how many American homes it is said, "Good Lord, is he on again?" So we opened the letter, and the writer asked the good Lord for $50. The postmaster said, "What do you think we ought to do about it?" I said, "Well, in order that he will not lose faith in divinity, I will send him 25. So I sent 25. 2 weeks later, the postmaster came back with another letter addressed to the good Lord, and the writer said, "The last time I asked for $50. I am asking for $50 again. Only this time, please send the money through Cardinal Spellman, because Bishop Sheen cheated me out of 25. That experience creates the problem of who is the good neighbor. And once there was a lawyer who asked that question of our divine Lord. The lawyer first asked what he had to do to be saved, and our blessed Lord asked him what the law read, and after saying that he had to love God and the neighbor, then the lawyer said, "But who is my neighbor?" And our blessed Lord answered it by telling the story of the Good Samaritan. And the point of the parable was, not who is my neighbor, but have you the neighborly spirit? In other words, instead of asking, is this a worthy object of charity, our blessed Lord implied we should ask if we are a worthy subject. And that parable of the Good Samaritan, as the Savior told it, was about a man who went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And one does go down from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's a distance of about 24 miles. And the descent is about 3,000 feet. Jericho is about 600 feet below the level of the Mediterranean. There's only one part in that road where there could possibly be an inn. There's only one place where there's water, and there's only one place where there's a plateau. Everywhere along that road that is still called the Bloody Road, it is possible for robbers to hide. I remember some years ago I was going down that road, and I stopped at an inn. And there was an Arab at the inn, and I said, "Did you ever hear the story of the Good Samaritan?" He said, "No." And I said, "You know, you're losing good business because everybody else knows the story of the Good Samaritan. This is the end to which he was brought." So I asked for a bucket of paint. He gave me a bucket of red paint, and I painted the sign, "The Good Samaritan Inn." Well, our blessed Lord told the story of the man who went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, was attacked by robbers, left half wounded, and a priest and a Levite passed the wounded man by, and then this Samaritan, a member of the despised race, took the man on his beast, brought him to the inn, poured in oil and wine into his wounds, and gave the innkeeper 2 days' wages, and asked the innkeeper to care for him, and then said, "I will come back again and pay you what I owe over and above what I have given you." And the Good Samaritan was the one who had compassion on the wounded man. Such was the parable, which you know very well. Now let us modernize it and break it down into the problem of modern social work and social problems in general. There are 4 questions that we may ask. First, who creates social problems? Secondly, who ignore social problems? 3, professional workers. And 4th, oh yes, after professional workers, I should say those who work out of duty. And 4th, the real solution, which is love, in contrast with duty. First, who creates social problems? Well, the original social problem in this parable was created by an act of violence, namely the robbers. And almost all social problems today are created by violence. The Second World War of ours begot 63 million refugees, many of whom threw themselves upon the earth as something more friendly than the hearts of men. 2 million refugees have crowded out of the eastern zone of Germany into the western zone for aid. They were the victims of violence. 2 million Chinese have come down from communist China down into Hong Kong, where there's an attempt made now to care for them. It's interesting that all the refugees are out from the lands of communist violence. Nobody is a refugee going back into those lands. Not even the communists who are arrested when they're in this country and are offered an opportunity to go to Russia rather than to go to jail. They always say, no, sir, I'll take an American jail, but I'll not go back to Russia. And then there's another kind of violence that creates social problems. It's not those who steal possessions and lands, but rather those who steal from the young the image of God that is in them. The educators who tell them that they have no intellect, they have no will, they have no soul, that they're just beasts, animals. Well, if they're just beasts, we should not be surprised that they will grow up to act like beasts. They're robbed of a great spiritual heritage. These help create the social problem. That brings us to the second question, namely, who ignore the social problem? Well, the social problem is ignored, first of all, by the communists. The communist philosophy is this, and here I'm quoting Marx. A person of and by himself is without any value. Unless an individual belongs to the revolutionary class, he is without worth. Hence, communism is willing to liquidate millions of people, so long as that socialistic, communistic core or species continues to exist. They are the ones who pass by the wounded people of earth. They are the continuators of the priest and Levite who passed by, the wounded man. And incidentally, I wondered what they did after they passed by that wounded man. You know what I think they did? I think they went either to Jerusalem or Jericho and reported the matter to organized charities. After first filling out 5 long blanks. Then there are others who ignore the social problem. There is a minority, and thank God it is only a minority in this country in the field of social work, who have been influenced by the Marxist or communist philosophy, and who believe that there are only social problems and not personal problems. They believe that you can manipulate society like you manipulate machinery. And once you understand social laws thoroughly, then all individual problems will be solved. This is not the truth. The only way one can ever remake society is by remaking persons. One cannot remake persons by remaking society, because society is basically made up only of individuals and persons. But this group who insist upon social control to the forgetfulness of individual control insist that you always have to make long investigations before you can ever solve any problem. Hence the tendency today, even among foundations, to spend great fortunes making investigations, but not helping people directly. Now, it's all right to make investigations when the alternatives are unknown. For example, suppose you wanted to find out Which do the American people like better, a singing commercial or a spoken commercial? Or a red commercial, that is, a red commercial or a blue commercial? The blue one is sung. Well, you would have to carry on an investigation to find that out. But when people are in need, when they're hungry, when they're unclothed, then one does not make an investigation. One first feeds and clothes them, cares for them, and then one finds out the number. That was what our blessed Lord did when he found the multitude in the desert. He said they were as sheep without a shepherd. And so he fed them all. And in feeding them, he discovered that there were 5,000. Some time ago, there was a picture magazine that carried a series of photographs of someone in the subway steps of New York. This individual was wounded or he fainted, and the photographer stood there for an hour. And he took pictures of everyone passing by this wounded man. The pictures appeared in this magazine in order to indicate that no one was interested in the individual. Why didn't the photographer help? Glory be to God. I hope if I ever fainted on this program that the cameramen would run to my aid instead of taking pictures of me. And then, too, there must have been a number of people, when they saw the photographer there taking pictures, they thought, well, maybe this is a movie, or it's something framed, but it certainly is not reality. But these are the people who pass by, the wounded of the earth, because they're more interested in this fictitious social than they are in the individual and in the person himself. And that brings us to the third division of the parable, namely the professional workers. Now, by the professional worker, we do not mean the organized worker. The distinction between the professional worker and those who offer the real solution is the distinction between duty and love. The professional worker is here understood as one like the innkeeper who receives a wage for doing great social work. But he works out of duty, just as the innkeeper received 2 days' pay. But it was necessary for the loving hands of the Samaritan to come back to aid the professional worker. Now, the professional workers are not necessarily in religious organizations. A professional worker could be in a secular organization and still work out of love. And it is even possible that there could be some social workers in religious organizations that were working out of duty and not out of love. Despite all the good that the duty worker does, it is not yet the real solution of the problem of charity, for the simple reason that they always work within limits. They believe in moderation. You never go too far. In other words, we close at 5. You say that there is that the family has not had food in 24 hours and you have no coal? Well, sorry, this is Washington's birthday, and call us on Monday and we will handle your case. There is apt to be that danger of moderation, which is not the way of love and charity. And incidentally, too, it is well for the people of a democracy to realize that they must not throw all the burdens of social workers, of social problems, upon professional workers and professional organizations. Suppose I had an automobile and I gave the right to drive the automobile to the governor. I gave the right to fill the air with hot air to the ward leader. I gave the right to buy gas to the lieutenant governor. Well, it wouldn't be long until I would no longer be free to drive the automobile. And as American people surrender responsibility for the poor and the sick and the aged in their community, they also surrender their democracy. The best preservative of freedom in any democracy is a recognition that we all have responsibility to the poor, sick, burnt, anemic members of our society. The real solution is the solution of love. The Good Samaritan who had compassion. And love here means three things. To the one who loves the poor, he always believes that the rich need the poor more than the poor ever need the rich. And by the rich, I mean only those who have relatively more than those who have not. Why do the poor need the rich? In order that they may have a roof over their heads, food in their stomach, clothes in their back, shoes in their feet. Why do the rich need the poor? In order that they may justify their stewardship of wealth. In order that they may thank God for the blessings that they have received. In order that they may have His grace in their hearts and His blessing on their being. The poor need the rich only for material reasons, but the rich need the poor for spiritual reasons. And that was why our blessed Lord said that those who have money are to use their money to make friends with the mammon of iniquity. The mammon of iniquity meaning money. Give it to the poor, and they will intercede for you on the last day. As a beggar once said to me in Madrid outside of a church, he said, listen, if you don't give to me, who will intercede for you in the last day? And then those who love also have a different way of handling the poor than anyone else. This is the way most of our charity and philanthropy is. It's vertical. This is a house. It's a... Well, now, it looks like one so far, doesn't it? This is the first story. This is the second story. On the second floor of this house, the rich live. That is to say, merely those who have. And down here, there's a poor family. Now, those who have, in most charity, will go down to the poor, supply their needs, nurse them, care for them. But after they have done that, they go back again to the comforts and maybe luxuries of their own home. That is not perfect love. Perfect love is rather horizontal. Here are those who have, and here are those who have not. In real love, those who have pass over to those who have not, and they never again come back. They stay there until they have been relieved of their sorrow or their pain or their poverty. Just as our blessed Lord came down to this earth, crossed from the line of innocence over to the line of sinners, stayed with them, suffered with them, died for them, until He finally redeemed them. This is the kind of love that missionaries have, that will become citizens of the country in which they are missionaries, in order to better share the problems and woes and sorrows of the people for whom they care. This is the love of saints, the love that transforms the world. And finally, those who love know that everything must be done for a divine motive. to give a drink of water in his name. And on the last day, even the great lovers of the poor will be surprised. For on that day of the great assize, when God judges them, even the just, the saved, the great good social workers will say, will ask our Lord a question when he will say, I was hungry, and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me to drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. These great lovers of the poor, who did things in his name, will be surprised that he was so pleased. And they will wonder when. The nurse will wonder when. And she will ask when. You mean when I took care of patient in room 238? You mean this file number 164? I cared for you. And the Savior, when they ask when, will say to them, when you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it unto me. Unto me. When people die, their friends ask, how much did they leave? And the angels of heaven asked, how much did they take with them in love?
It began here, in the upper room, 2,000 years ago. This is my body. This is my blood. Remember me. In a garden he prayed to his Father on a night of betrayal, torture, death, far from Galilee. When taken from his rack of torment, in a borrowed grave he lie. On the third day the angel said, he has risen. He did not die. After sharing with friends, he rose to the Father, leaving his spirit love to guide our journey. For he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, together again. People of all faiths recognize Bishop Fulton J. Sheen as one of the greatest communicators of the 20th century. He was born in El Paso, Illinois, in May of 1896. As a young boy, he knew he wanted to be a priest. He served as an altar boy at St. Mary's Cathedral in Peoria, Illinois. At St. Viator College, his education and debating skills taught him the skills he used throughout his life. His unique ability at being natural and at ease in front of any audience was noted early in his ministry. He was ordained in 1919 and went on to become one of the best-known and greatly loved priests in church history. He wrote 96 books and hundreds of articles and columns. He broadcast numerous radio and TV programs. People from all faiths watched him on television because he
was told by her parents to pray because there had been so many misfortunes and sufferings in the family. And so the little child prayed and said, Dear Lord, my brother has the mumps. Her sister fell off the bicycle and broke her leg. And my older brother has pneumonia, and Daddy lost his job. So, dear God, please take care of yourself, because if anything happens to you, we'll all be in the soup. We have received so many letters from people who have had greater sufferings than this little girl. We decided tonight to talk on the subject of suffering. First, on some of the paradoxes of suffering. Secondly, on two ways of meeting pain or suffering. And finally, how to accept it. First of all, the paradoxes. Have you noticed that in our contemporary civilization, there happens to be a coincidence? First of all, of great material prosperity, and at the same time, a tremendous amount of inner and mental discontent. First of all, we do have material prosperity. The per capita income of the United States is around $1,750. In China is $26 a year. But along with that, there's an inner unhappiness. 51% of the hospital beds of the United States are occupied by mental patients. We ought not to have this tragic sense of life with so much prosperity. Why is it? Certainly is not because we're prosperous. It can only be because, to a great extent, we are assuming that all we need to be happy is some external prosperity. In other words, we've made our philosophy a philosophy of having, rather than a philosophy of being. And the reason there is this inner discontent and unhappiness is because man is trying to put the infinite into the finite. This is the mathematical symbol of the infinite. This is the symbol of the finite. And what we're trying to do with our soul and our heart that was made for the infinite of life and truth and love, we are attempting to pull this infinite down into our finite structure with all of its material environment. It simply cannot be done. Rather, what we should do to be happy in the midst of prosperity is to take this finite nature of ours and plunge it into the infinite. As Hans Werfel said, this line of the human and the finite and reason must be crossed somehow or other. And Werfel, continuing, says, it is crossed above by faith, and it is crossed below by insanity. That is the first peculiar paradox of modern suffering. Now there's a second. And the second has to do with pleasure. Have you ever noticed that we have a greater capacity for pain than we have for pleasure? For example, our pleasures are not always very enduring. For one thing, a pleasure can reach a point where it will give us pain. It can turn into pain. For example, tickling. And then also, have you noticed, too, that pleasure sometimes will go up like this, and then there will be a sudden drop in them. And finally, in order to get identically the same reaction, one must very much increase the stimulus. So we're not getting here, out of this life, all of the pleasure and happiness that we possibly can. But pain, it seems, could very quickly reach an end, and yet somehow it reaches that end that we anticipated, and we still bear it. We go to a dentist, and we feel that if he drills 5 minutes more and goes 6 feet deeper, I just can't stand it. We stand it all right. And then he continues to bore, and we know he's going to hit oil. We stand it. There are many people listening to me in sick beds of suffering who felt that they should have exhausted themselves months or years ago, but they still can go on suffering. Now, why is this? Why do we have a greater capacity for pain than for pleasure? I think because it was intended by God that all pain here should end. That's why we seem to exhaust it. Because there will come another world when tears will be wiped away. The sorrows of this life are not worthy to be compared with the joys that are to come. But with pleasure and joy, particularly, is not intended to be exhausted here. That comes elsewhere. That happiness is being saved for heaven. And if people understood that, perhaps they would be, well, less mentally disturbed, less inclined to go to the psychiatrist, because they've all got skeletons in their closet. They make no bones about it. That brings us to the double reaction to pain. There are two possible ways of enduring pain. As Stevenson expressed two ways of looking out of prison bars. Two men looked out through prison bars. The one saw mud, the other stars. And in the midst of agony and pain and suffering, one reaction of pain can be rebellion. The other reaction of pain can be resignation. Why this difference? The difference is due to the fact that this person sees no purpose in pain. And when there's no purpose seen, no final destiny, when pain is just as opaque as a curtain, then it's rather natural for the soul to revolt against it. When one can see a purpose in it, see it as a means, see it transparent, and as opening onto something else, then there can be resignation. These two attitudes toward pain were perfectly exemplified on a day when two thieves and revolutionists were put to death. They were crucified on either side of our divine Lord. Both of these revolutionists suffered exactly the same torture. They had identically the same background. When they each felt the impress of the nail in their hands, when the crucifixion began, they blasphemed. And then when finally they had mounted their crosses, they heard the one on the central cross speak. It was a peculiar word he spoke. Generally, when men die, they either protest their innocence, or if they have any spark of justice in their souls, they ask for forgiveness. But here, for the first time in the history of the world, the Son of God on the central cross was saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. When the thief on the left heard this cry, he suspected that there on that central cross was power. And so he asked the one on the central cross if he had power to take him down. That to him was the sign of omnipotence, to stop that pain and that suffering. Why should he be there? Why did he ask to be taken down? Not to be made better, but simply to go on with the dirty business of thieving. But the other thief, When he heard that prayer from the central cross, he immediately began to see a relationship between his sufferings and his guilt. His background as a blackguard, a revolutionist, and a racketeer. And some sparks from the central cross ignited some inflammable material in his soul. And in the belfry of his conscience, the bell began to toll. He spoke to his brother thief, and he said, "Fear ye not, fear ye not. We suffer the just reward of our crimes. But this man has done no wrong." Then he uttered a prayer. And turning to the divine Savior on the central cross, he said, "Remember me. Remember me when thou shalt come into thy kingdom." Kingdom? This one who apparently was a fellow criminal, the thief, looked at a crown of thorns and saw there a royal diadem. The nail was to him a scepter of power and authority. His crucifixion was his installation, his blood was his royal purple. And he asked only to be remembered. And there came back this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. Now, it was the foundation of democracy, the worth of a single soul. Thou shalt be with me. I always wonder why he said in paradise. Be with him is paradise. And the thief died a thief, for he stole paradise. And paradise can be stolen again. And from these two reactions, we see the one that is to be chosen. The two ways in which pain can be used. Pain can be used, first of all, in expiation. That is to say, for our own failings and sins. Secondly, in reparations, for the failings and the sins of others. First of all, expiation. I can remember when I was a boy, about 8 or 9 years of age, my brother and I were playing a ball in the backyard, and we threw a ball accidentally through the neighbor's window. And Mother heard it, and she called us in. And she sent us to our piggy bank. And she made us take the money out and go over to the man next door and give him the money for the broken window. And also ask him to forgive us. Now, why shouldn't we just ask to be forgiven? Because we broke a window. People think that when they do anything wrong, all they have to do is be forgiven. Oh no, we disturb an equilibrium, an order. That order often has to be redressed. For example, if I stole your watch, if I stole the watch of one of these operators here, if I could get close enough to this cameraman and steal his watch here, and then I would say to him, "I'm awfully sorry, I stole your watch. Will you forgive me?" He says, "Yes, I forgive you." But he says, "Give me back my watch." Well, so it is if we have sins And who, in the name of God, hasn't? Well, we can ask the good Lord to take the pains, come to us in expiation and redress and atonement for all the wrong that we have done. We put down our foot, for example, 3 times in illegitimate, sinful pleasure, and to get back there to do right again, we've got to put our foot down in pain and be like little doggies with our tail in back of us. And then when we reach this point, then only can we begin to do good. That's one way pain can be used. And the second way in which it can be used is in reparation. And here we offer it up for others, not just for ourselves. How often, for example, in the physical order, doctors will graft skin. If we burn our face, from our back to our face, to restore our pristine elegance. If a person is suffering from anemia, doctors will transfuse blood from an anemic member of society to the healthy member of society to the anemic person in order to cure the person of that condition. Now, if it's possible to transfuse blood, don't you think it's possible to transfuse prayer? If it's possible to graft skin, is it not possible also to graft some reparation, some sacrifices? We live in a world in which we do not grow the sheep, for example, though we wear woolen clothes. Others help us. So it's possible to take our sorrows, our disappointments, and the jealousies and the hatreds of others and turn them all back again as the thief at the right did, in order that someone else might be saved. That's reparation. Why should we offer up our sufferings in expiation or reparation? Simply because we love. Love will not kill pain, but love will diminish it. A mother sits up with her sick child all night long. For it's not agony, it's love. There are not
fear.